So this morning, welcome everyone. We're gonna have a slightly different session on the intensity of non-self-deception. And so just take a moment to center yourself. It's really wonderful to spend these mornings being in a state of receptivity and authenticity and inner connection. This morning's session, I'd like to invite you to, if you like, you don't really have to do this, but if you like, it'll help, to get a notebook and a pen. A notebook and a pen will be helpful, so just take a minute if you need to get that for yourself. We can also do it without a notebook and a pen. It might just work better with a notebook and a pen. And the idea for today is to take a really honest look at ourselves. And the idea is to take an honest look at ourselves without judgment. This is interesting. To not evaluate ourselves with the eyes of likes and dislikes, but to take an honest self-assessment. What's really going on? So which is why I've called this session the intensity of non-self-deception. There's a beautiful teaching that the more aware we get, the more we realize just how unaware we are. The more aware we get, we realize just how much we fool ourselves. And how many layers of beliefs and conditionings and habits, patterns are constantly operating. So what I'd like us to do is to, for the next 25 minutes or so, just take a look at our own self, look at our own habits, our own ways of thinking, our own ways of speaking, our own ways of being. And there's no particular order to this. Whatever comes into your mind, you just trust that. And the preferred way I would recommend is to write it down. But you don't have to write it down. You could also do it in your mind. Because even just coming face to face with it itself is healing. And what will you write down? You will write down what in your life is flowing and what in your life feels stuck. What in your life feels healthy and what in your life feels unhealthy. What in your life feels clean and clear? What in your life feels toxic? What in your life feels optimal and what in your life feels less than optimal? And it's not about trying to find a solution to it necessarily. It's just about going ahead and looking at it without blinking. In other words, just coming face to face with where we are in our life. Because an honest self-assessment is the ground floor, is the foundation of all true transformation. If you're not even honest with ourselves, then what hope do we have? And also in Alcoholics Anonymous, this is a group that helps people come out of their patterns of abusing substances, alcohol in this case. That's one of the really important steps, to make a honest self-assessment, and often is done with the help of someone else, because again, our capacity to deceive ourselves is so deep. So this is what we're going to be doing for the next 22, 23 minutes. I want you to sit with yourself and just take a look at your own self, look at your own life, and see what feelings come up, see what thoughts come up, see what memories come up. If you want to write them down, you can. And the most important thing is it's done from a place of non-judgment, a place of surrender, actually, trusting that there's a larger purpose in life, which we don't always understand. Sometimes we have to go through a challenging time, a stuck period, to come to a broader understanding of ourselves and of life. So with that spirit, let us now begin. And every now and again, I'll just remind you what we're doing. And we're coming face to face with our own energetic signature. Certain aspects of our life are quite flowing, like we said, healthy, flowing, spacious, aligned. Some parts of our life may be less aligned, contracted, stuck, dense. Doing this can be sometimes a pretty uncomfortable process, but it's a good kind of discomfort. One of the beautiful practices is to every day look back at the day and check, how did the day go? And notice where in our day do we tend to get triggered? Do we tend to get distracted? Do we tend to get derailed from our own alignment, from our own values? A lot is revealed there if you pay attention. And even if nothing much is coming for some of you, I'd just like you to continue, persist, stay with the session. Be willing to take that unblinking look at yourself, your own life. There is a great beauty in gratitude and appreciation and rejoicing. There's also a great beauty in taking an honest look at ourselves and knowing where we deceive ourselves. And that is equally, if not more, spiritual. So we're spending these quiet moments in the morning, self-reflecting, either writing it down or just staying with the energies as we look at ourselves. Some people only do this when they really get knocked by life. When they're the divorce, or they're the cancer, or they lose their job. We don't have to wait for that. We don't have to wait for a major life crisis to take a really honest look at ourselves and know that where our own patterns are compromising us. This process also reveals to us the gap between the head and the heart. There are things we know, and yet they don't always come into our lives. There are things we believe in, and yet if you look very carefully, there are lots of gaps in when it comes to actually practicing them, and this is inevitable. It's not like it's a this is definitely going to happen, but to be aware of it, I often give the analogy of the headlights of a car. They illuminate the coming 100 or 200 feet. So what you can see of where you want to be, it's always ahead of where you are. And that's the nature of things. We'll always see ahead what the next steps are, and there'll always be a bit of a gap over there. It's not a good or a bad thing, it's just the nature of life. In other words, it's where you are is perfect, and yet there's scope for improvement. I'm perfect and improving. I'm perfect and improving. I'm constantly, inevitably perfect and improving. If I think I'm just perfect, then that's actually stagnation. If I think I'm imperfect, then that is a lack of self-acceptance and some kind of comparison, some kind of notion of who you should be instead of who you are. So I'm whole and complete. And from this wholeness and completeness comes an even broader wholeness and completeness. So see what else is coming up. What's stuck? What's flowing? What's healthy? What's unhealthy? What's clean? What's toxic? What's optimal? What's suboptimal? One of my favorite quotes is, happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So as we are making even the tiniest of progress, consistently, little by little, moving in the right direction, of course there'll be ups and downs, then this is happiness. We're doing our utmost to move towards something that's valuable and meaningful to us. There's a beautiful serenity prayer, which I think most of you would know. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom difference. And what comes to me is that what definitely cannot be changed is the present. We're here now. It's too late. It's already here. The way you're sitting, the way you're standing, the way you're dressed, it's already here. what's going on, it's already here. Circumstances of your life is already here. So accept the serenity to accept the way things are, whatever's coming up in your journal, what you're writing down. Accept it. What you can change is your way of looking at it. Instead of looking at it with judgment and shame and guilt, and instead of telling a poor quality story about yourself and the world, what can be changed is a different perspective, a different way of looking at it. A fresh, new, beautiful perspective. This can be changed. And from that different perspective comes the energy, thoughts, words, and actions that are more coherent, more beautiful, more aligned. So the wisdom to know the difference between what is and our thoughts about what is, our stories about what is. The serenity to accept what is, even love what is. The courage to challenge our stories about what is. Upgrade our stories about what is, and perhaps even abandon all possible stories about what is. And the wisdom to know the difference between what is and our stories about what is. Again, I want to give you a few minutes of silence. See what else is coming as you make a fearless self-assessment, self-reflection. Self-reflection is one of the most powerful muscles that we can develop. And can lead to surprising discoveries. As we just allow ourselves to be with ourselves, look back at our lives, look back at life, life looking at life. For me, an attitude of surrender is also really important with this. Surrender not in the form of giving up and putting our hands up, but surrender in the sense that it's all a really big mystery. how we've landed up in this body and mind, how we've landed up in this particular family, in this particular life circumstance, in this particular time of history, just in this realm, how we landed up here. It's all a big mystery. These particular set of genes, these particular set of conditionings, these particular set of traumas, these particular set of aspirations. It's actually a huge big mystery. So to surrender to that, it's not a personal process. What you're writing down or what you're reflecting on, it's not personal. It's an impersonal process. And looking at it also impersonally, this is the very strange thing about this, that looking at it without judgment, just looking back. The very act of looking, the very act of observation, the very act of witnessing, the very act of knowing, the very act of non-self-deception, that itself is cleansing, that itself is freeing, that itself raises, uplifts, creates a shift, transformation. The very act of looking, the very act of knowing. That's also part of the process. I don't think we can really ever complete this process. We can just give ourselves to it. I'm going to complete this evening session, this morning session rather, with a random page from Robert Adams. And I also read from Robert Adams yesterday, one of my very important favorite teachers. We're reading from a book called Silence of the Heart. And I'm just going to trust that what I open, the page I open, will be appropriate for where we are right now. So it says, there's a question to him. Does a mind exist in the real world? And Robert says, it appears to exist. It's an appearance. So the questioner, but it's not there? Robert says, there really is no mind. So the questioner says, it's just a belief? And Robert responds, the mind is a belief? It is really your thoughts. All of your thoughts are the mind. Your thoughts come from out of the mind. It's really the thoughts that you have to get rid of, to remove from yourself. So the mind is a conglomeration of thoughts. Thoughts about the past and worries about the future. This is all the mind is. When you really understand the nature of the mind will disappear. The mind is like a rainbow. The rainbow seems to be real, but when you get close to it, it doesn't exist. It's an optical illusion. Such is the mind. The mind is the same thing. The mind makes you believe you are a body and that you go through experiences with your body. And the mind continues to fool you by making you believe that there is karma, there is reincarnation, there are sanskaras. There's a whole mess of things that you have to get rid of. But when you inquire, to whom does the mind come? The mind will flee. It will run away. And you'll be free. And the questioner says, Robert, when you're referring to the mind, in the question, what about things like, say, cooking and electronics or driving your car on the freeway? Those things enter the mind. And Robert says, when the mind is gone, all those things are spontaneous. What we call the self, the consciousness, motivates you. You will do those things spontaneously. All the things that you have to do will be done. But it will no longer be the mind doing this. You see, it will be consciousness, the self. So the questioner says, so those things and the mind are different things? And Robert responds that the mind is really consciousness, but appears to be the mind like a dream. When you give up the mind, only consciousness exists. And then you'll be motivated, guided by consciousness. So, what would you call these practical things? The questioner says. That they're not mind, that they're just objects out of their own, inanimate objects. And Robert says, what you call practical things is also like your body. As long as you believe you're a body, then there will be practical things for you to take care of. But when you realize that you're not the body, you're not the mind, then there no longer will be practical things for you to take care of. Yet you will appear to be taking care of them. They'll be taken care of better than you ever do before. At the same time, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's not you that is the doer. You're not the doer. Yet everything will be done. So what a beautiful reading this morning from Robert Adams. And I'm going to go ahead and read a Buddha doodle for today. It's kind of dark outside, so I don't think I can show it to you. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. And I might attach the picture. Wow, what a beautiful one. It says, love helps carry you through life's ups and downs. Love helps carry you through life's ups and downs. This is a nice picture of an elephant and a monk. All right, so this has been our morning session. We reflected on self-deception and just took a fearless look back at ourselves. And we ended with a beautiful reading reminding us that we are not the doer, that things are the way they are, and that we are not the body and mind, we are just consciousness. It's all consciousness. And so, how wonderful. All right, everyone, take care. Have a lovely day. Be happy.